The unexpected meeting. The rain hammered against the glass windows of the downtown coffee shop as Victoria Chen pressed her face closer to the warmth radiating from inside. Her stomach growled fiercely, reminding her that she hadn't eaten anything substantial in 2 days. The 26-year-old woman pulled her threadbare jacket tighter around her slender frame, her dark hair plastered against her face from the relentless downpour. Victoria had once been different. 3 years ago, she was a promising art student, with dreams of opening her own gallery. But life had a cruel way of shattering dreams when her parents died in a car accident, leaving her with crushing medical debt and no family to turn to. The scholarship money dried up. Her small apartment was lost to eviction, and slowly but surely the streets became her only option. Now, as she watched well-dressed people sip their expensive lattes through the coffee shop window, Victoria felt the familiar sting of invisibility. People looked through her, around her, but never at her. She had become a ghost in her own city. That's when she saw him. Jonathan Wright stepped out of a sleek black sedan, his perfectly tailored suit untouched by the rain thanks to his driver's umbrella. At 34, he was the youngest CEO to ever. Head Wright Industries, a multinational corporation worth billions. His sharp jawline and piercing blue eyes had graced the covers of business magazines. But tonight, those eyes were tired from another 18-hour workday. As Jonathan hurried toward the coffee shop entrance, something made him pause. Maybe it was the way Victoria stood so still in the storm, or perhaps the dignity in her posture despite her obvious circumstances. Their eyes met through the rain-streaked glass. Victoria's breath caught in her throat. She had seen this man before, on billboards and news reports. Jonathan Wright, the untouchable CEO who lived in a world so far removed from hers that they might as well have been on different planets. She expected him to look away, to pretend he hadn't seen her, but he didn't. Instead, Jonathan found himself walking toward her, his expensive leather shoes splashing through puddles he would normally avoid. "Miss, are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentler than Victoria had expected. Victoria's first instinct was to run. She had learned that kindness from strangers often came with strings attached, and she couldn't afford to owe anyone anything. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice barely audible over the rain. Jonathan noticed the way she held herself, chin up, despite everything. There was something regal about her, even in her tattered clothes. "When was the last time you ate?" he asked directly. The question caught Victoria off guard. Most people asked if she needed money or directions to a shelter. No one had ever asked about her last meal with such genuine concern. "I don't need your pity," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "It's not pity," Jonathan replied, surprising himself with his honesty. "It's curiosity. You have paint under your fingernails." Victoria's eyes widened. She looked down at her hands, indeed noticing the faint traces of blue paint she had missed while cleaning up after her last art session in the abandoned warehouse where she sometimes slept. "How did you—" "My mother was an artist," Jonathan explained softly. "She had the same look in her eyes that you do, like you see the world differently than everyone else." For the first time in months, Victoria felt truly seen. This powerful man wasn't looking at her circumstances. He was looking at her. "I haven't painted in weeks," she admitted. "Supplies are expensive." Jonathan nodded, understanding more than she realized. "Would you let me buy you dinner? No strings attached, just a meal, and maybe you could tell me about your art?" Victoria studied his face, searching for hidden motives. All she found was genuine interest and something that looked almost like loneliness. "Why would someone like you care about someone like me?" The question hit Jonathan harder than he expected. In his world of corporate sharks and calculated relationships, when was the last time someone had asked him a real question? "Maybe because you're the first person in years who doesn't want something from me," he said. They sat in a small diner across the street. Victoria, initially uncomfortable with the warm lighting and curious stares from other patrons. Jonathan had insisted on a booth in the back, sensing her need for privacy. As she ate her first real meal in days, he found himself captivated by the way she described colors, how she saw art in the most mundane objects. "I used to paint sunrise over the city from my apartment rooftop," Victoria said, her eyes lighting up with the memory. "The way the light hit the buildings, it was like watching the city wake up and stretch." Jonathan found himself leaning forward, drawn into her world. "What happened to your paintings?" Victoria's expression darkened. "Lost everything when I couldn't pay rent. The landlord threw them out with the rest of my stuff." She paused, then added quietly, "I tried to save them, but you can only carry so much when you're living out of a backpack." The pain in her voice was raw, unfiltered. Jonathan realized he had never heard such honest emotion before. In his world, vulnerability was weakness. But Victoria's openness wasn't weakness. It was courage. As the evening progressed, Jonathan found himself sharing things he never told anyone. The pressure of expectations, the loneliness of success, the way he sometimes felt like a stranger in his own life. Victoria listened without judgment, occasionally offering insights that cut straight to the heart of his struggles. Success without connection is just expensive loneliness, she observed, and Jonathan felt something shift inside his chest. When it was time to leave, Jonathan didn't want the evening to end. "Where are you staying tonight?" he asked, though he dreaded the answer. Victoria hesitated. "There's a shelter across town if they have space." The thought of her walking through the dangerous streets alone made Jonathan's stomach clench. "I have a guest house," he offered carefully. "It's separate from the main house, completely private, just for tonight until the storm passes." Victoria studied his face again, that same searching look. This time she saw something different. Not pity or ulterior motives, but genuine care. "Just tonight," she agreed softly. As they rode through the city in Jonathan's car, both lost in their own thoughts, neither realized that this unexpected meeting would change everything they thought they knew about love, life, and the courage it takes to trust again. Hearts collide. Victoria woke up in the softest bed she had experienced in years. For a moment, she forgot where she was, panicking until the memories of the previous evening flooded back. Jonathan's guest house was modest by his standards, but felt like a palace to her. Clean sheets, hot water, and most importantly, safety. She found fresh clothes laid out for her, simple but well-made pieces that somehow fit perfectly. A note beside them read, "These belong to my sister. She would have wanted them to be worn by someone who needed them. J." When Victoria emerged from the guest house, she found Jonathan in his garden, staring at a blank canvas set up on an easel. Beside it was a complete set of professional art supplies, still in their packaging. "I thought you might want to paint the sunrise," he said, without turning around. "You talked about it so beautifully last night." Victoria's hands trembled as she approached the easel. It had been months since she had held a brush, and these supplies were worth more than she had seen in a year. "I can't accept this," she whispered. Jonathan finally turned to face her, and Victoria's breath caught. In the morning light, without his business armor, he looked younger, more vulnerable. "My mother always said that art chooses its vessel. Maybe this is just the universe correcting course." As the sun began to rise over the city skyline, Victoria found herself painting again. Colors flowed from her brush like music, capturing not just the light, but the emotion of the moment. Jonathan watched in fascination as the canvas came alive under her hands. "You're incredible," he breathed, moving closer to study her technique. Victoria felt his presence behind her, warm and solid. "You're the first person to see me paint in years," she admitted, her voice soft. I want to be the last person to— See you go without it, Jonathan replied, his words heavy with meaning. Victoria turned to face him, and the intensity in his eyes made her heart race. They were standing so close she could feel his breath on her face, see the flecks of gold in his blue eyes. Jonathan, we're from different worlds. Maybe that's exactly what we both need, he said, reaching up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was electric, sending shivers down her spine. The attraction between them had been building since their first meeting, an undeniable pull that transcended their circumstances. Victoria had tried to ignore it, to protect herself from inevitable heartbreak. But as Jonathan's thumb traced her cheek, she felt her defenses crumbling. I don't want to be another one of your charity cases, she whispered, even as she leaned into his touch. You're not charity, Jonathan said fiercely. You're the woman who made me remember what it feels like to be human. You're the artist who sees beauty where others see despair. You're the strongest person I've ever met. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever seen her strength before, only her struggles. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I, Jonathan confessed. I've never felt this way about anyone. You terrify me and complete me at the same time. Their lips met in a kiss that was tender and desperate all at once. Victoria felt years of loneliness and pain melting away as Jonathan's arms wrapped around her. This wasn't just physical attraction. It was the collision of two souls who had been searching for each other without knowing it. As the kiss deepened, Victoria felt herself surrendering to feelings she had thought were lost forever. Jonathan's hands tangled in her hair, and she pressed herself closer to him, needing to feel his warmth, his strength, his absolute presence. Stay with me, Jonathan whispered against her lips. Not as my guest, not as someone I'm helping. Stay as the woman I'm falling in love with. Victoria pulled back to look into his eyes, seeing nothing but truth and vulnerability. I've been invisible for so long I forgot what it felt like to be wanted. You're not invisible to me, Jonathan said, cupping her face in his hands. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Their second kiss was hungrier, more urgent. Victoria's hands explored the strong lines of Jonathan's chest through his shirt, while his lips traced a path down her neck. She had forgotten how good it felt to be desired, to be cherished. As passion overtook them, they moved inside the guest house, their clothes becoming obstacles to overcome. Victoria's fingers fumbled with Jonathan's shirt buttons while he worshipped, her collarbone with gentle kisses that made her gasp. Are you sure? Jonathan asked, his voice rough with desire but his eyes still searching hers for consent. I've never been more sure of anything, Victoria replied, and she meant it. This man who had seen past her circumstances to her soul, who had given her back her art and her dignity, had also awakened feelings she thought were dead. Their lovemaking was intense and tender, a perfect fusion of passion and emotion. Jonathan touched Victoria like she was made of precious porcelain, while she showed him a vulnerability and fire he had never experienced. They moved together like they had been created for this moment, two broken pieces becoming whole. Afterward, as they lay entwined in the morning light, Victoria traced patterns on Jonathan's chest while he played with her hair. What happens now? She asked softly. Jonathan tilted her chin up to meet his gaze. Now we build something real. I want to help you start again, not as charity, but as partners. Your art, your dreams, everything you lost. We can get it back. Together. Victoria felt tears of joy streaming down her face. I love you, she whispered, the words feeling foreign but absolutely right on her tongue. I love you too, Jonathan replied, sealing his promise with a kiss that tasted like new beginnings. 6 months later, Victoria's first art exhibition opened in downtown gallery space that Jonathan had helped her secure. But this time, she wasn't his charity case or his project. She was his equal, his partner, his heart. As they stood together watching people admire her paintings, Jonathan squeezed her hand. "Ready to take on the world together?" he asked with a smile. Victoria squeezed back, her eyes bright with love and possibility. "With you? I'm ready for anything." Their love story had begun with an unexpected meeting in the rain, but it would continue for a lifetime of sunrises painted together, hearts beating as one, proving that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the most unexpected places.